Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for my client Saif's vlog, and this is, of course, a deload week, which means, we're going very light. He deloads every fourth week, and it just has to do with the nature of his recovery, nature of his job. So, he wanted to mess this week with his straight bar again, just for this work, because he wants to get practice getting under the straight bar, seeing how his bicep feels and everything else. And it went really, really well. We're happy with that this week. So again, he wanted to test it. And his squat days are pretty straightforward. We just do back off work. It's not even true back off work. This is actual main work on a deload week. Now, some people will go, well, what's the difference? Because we're going into it not fatigued. So 50% for 10 is actually really easy. It's not a problem for most people if they come in fresh. Now, the difference is if we've done one of these MREP type sets, which again is kind of what this type of training system is based upon, then we are much, much more fatigued. In other words, if you've taken 90% of your training max and you've done it to almost failure to, within one rep of failure on a big lift, we are very fatigued. And what I mean by fatigued, it will be more so than what we see from a one rep max or a training max. And I think people don't realize that. They have this idea in their head that heavy singles are really taxing to come in and ramp up to a single. And then people will say, oh yeah, that's difficult. It's hard to recover from, but it really isn't. It's not. We can actually handle our volume work with much heavier weights for the same reps sometimes immediately after that than we can after doing this type of training. So that's a little bit of a misconception I found. I know for me, for my lifters, that's the case. And people forget that. Like even for me at my last meet, less than 48 hours later, I was doing heavy work again. I was doing conjugate work. I was deadlifting up in the mid 500s again within 2 days, right? We went right into conjugate with ME days because we only did, the big lifts for the few attempts we did. I didn't even take a third deadlift, right? 2 heavy singles on a deadlift. Of course I was ready to train again, right? Water cuts are the only thing fatiguing about a meet. I would say if we didn't have water cuts to deal with, powerlifting meets wouldn't even need to be planned for. I mean, realistically, I could just do them randomly. It wouldn't even matter. Maybe do a 24-hour fast and be done with it. So people need to understand that difference here. So if we do this same work for him and just count it as a deload week without the heavy work first and without as much assistance work, these turn into, barely a training response. It's just blood flow. It's maintaining the movement patterns. And that's all we're doing on a week like this, right? That's all that's necessary. And again, it works quite well in regard to that because it's completely different training. So people will see that and say, what is the difference between doing this same work in a workout versus doing it in a deload? And that's what it comes down to. It's the lack of fatigue. But those plus sets create quite a bit of fatigue. Keeping in mind we are doing them with big classic barbell lifts, squat, bench, deadlift, right? We're doing them with the classic lifts. These are lifts that utilize a lot of muscle mass. They use a lot of neural components due to the multi-joint nature. And it has a great deal of fatigue. So in this case, what do? We do some back squats. I didn't do some belt squats, but I had a problem with the footage this time. We run into a lot of footage upload issues with him. He has to send stuff multiple times sometimes. And it just has to do with the international nature of the transfer. So after the bench work, of course, we do just some band press downs. And then I have him do his seal rows. Now his band work, we utilize year round. We utilize it year-round. Even in deload weeks, we always keep the deload stuff in. And the reason for that is quite simple. It's quite simple. He needs the tendon health, right? We need the tendon health. He tends to get a lot of inflammation around his elbows, his joints, his biceps, his tricep tendons. And again, it also has to do with the amount of heavy carrying that he does. He does a large amount of heavy carrying. on a daily basis at work, and that impacts it. And I'll answer the question now because people have asked multiple times in vlogs. He doesn't want to tell you what he does. It's nobody's business. It's just that it's a very physically demanding job. So then we get to deadlift day. And on deadlift day, we, again, just do sets of 10 at 50% on a deload week. We do these, and then we do some of his other stuff. We do the 45-degree hypers. We do the band bicep work. And again, just these little simple things with the basic movements. We don't take them as close to failure, though. So if we look at this, just like we're probably 5 reps from failure with these sets, 5 reps from failure, maybe further since we're doing on fresh. We get to the last set on a lot of these 50% ones, and probably only the 4th or 5th set are within 5 reps of failure, which means we get a very small training response. Again, we get blood flow, a little bit of endurance, movement pattern, but we're not really creating much real fatigue that we have to recover from. But the training response is low too. The idea here, though, is that by doing it this way, that we continue to stimulate some muscle growth. And it also has an active recovery component. Because usually what I find with lifters in general, whole weeks off make us really, really sore. It is not as good for recovery, right? It's not as good for recovery at all. It's problematic. Whereas with active deloading like this, it's completely different. It's completely different. I used to not be recovered from my deload weeks, but it had to do with, when people realize now, all those deload weeks I was taking for years was me traveling. And, those trips home and layovers at airports and everything really, really impacted my recovery significantly. So in that case, taking a week off from real training and just doing a little band work and stuff, it, didn't really help me to recover that well. It didn't help me to always be stronger when I came back. Whereas with a deload like this, if a person really isn't subjecting themselves to extra stress, and they're just doing active recovery in this way, a lot of times they come back stronger. And he does, right? He comes back stronger. So like I said, we finish it up with the light deadlifts, then he does some hyper extensions with lighter weight than normal, then the high rep band curls. And that's pretty much his week, and then we come back each week stronger. We PR on each new block. It's what we've been doing for him for months now, very successfully. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.